Hi, welcome to the F1 Time Portal, a Formula One history podcast started by two Formula One disciples. I'm your host, Rosa.
And I'm your MP3 player host, Luigi. And today we're taking you back to the 98 season to actually get to the review of Eddie Jordan's first win. So let's go.
Yeah, I was a bit nervous about using disciples, Louis, but I think that's what we are. I think we if we're going to choose a religion, it's going to be Formula One.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think you've used disciples before because
I have, yeah.
There was some trauma associated with it last time. So
MP3s, are you telling me that MP3s came out in 1998?
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Wow.
Yeah.
Both of these episodes have made me feel very old.
Yeah, I know. And MP3 doesn't even exist anymore because everyone's got their iPhones or Androids or whatever. So
really, the Gen Xers have had the worst type of history with music playing of all the generations. Like the boomers just had
records,
vinyl. Yeah. We've had to go from like vinyl to CD, tapes, CDs, MP3s.
Yeah. MP3 to phones.
Yeah, to streaming platforms.
Yeah, and now it's flatlined. Anyway, yes, we're here to talk about 1998. We spent the last episode having a really good chat about Jordan.
Yes,
as
Eddie,
a person.
Eddie the man. That's right.
Yeah. So now we're talking about that first win. Because they only won 4 races.
I know.
Yeah, and this first one obviously would mean the most. And we'll talk more about what he did afterwards. It was very funny, but yeah.
Right, so we have to set the scene a little bit, don't we? Because this race isn't the first of the season.
Yeah, and because it's the 13th race of the season, we have to paint the picture a little bit to give you context, to appreciate what sort of a win it was. I think it was a very special win because I think only 2 teams have won races up to this point. I don't know if Benetton won any. I don't think so.
Ferrari and McLaren, I'm guessing.
Just Ferrari and McLaren, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll get into it, shall we? So we're just going to go take turns telling the story and no doubt talking and joking along the way. So the 98 season was a season it was considered by many as the beginning of a new era because there were a lot of regulation changes. And this was because the cars were made narrower and they had grooved tyres. So I remember
grooved tyres?
I remember those grooved tyres. I didn't like them.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So the idea was to reduce cornering speeds and improve safety. And these changes really did disrupt the established order. And as well as these fundamental changes, there were changes within the team. So Williams, who'd come off a dominant 96-97 with their Williams Renault, and that won the championship with Hill and Villeneuve, Renault was leaving Formula One. And so you know what normally happens when a top team engines. Yeah, so Williams had to use a rebadged Renault engine, but basically an engine that wasn't being developed anymore, just like Benetton. So in those days, it was Williams versus Benetton, and they both fell away. The other big change that happened, and it's funny that we're recording this in early 2025, but Adrian Newey had just left Williams to join McLaren. And he was seen as a great designer. And in fact, his designs have won 6 of the previous 7 championships. And we've heard this sort of comment before.
He's the most celebrated designer, engineer, isn't he? He's got the most championships to his name in the history. Yeah.
So at that time, it was seen as a big deal, but not a monster deal like it is now.
Like it is today. Yeah.
Oh yes. And Rosa, who was leading Williams?
Luigi once again has gotten who's reading what mixed up. So now I'm Luigi now. So Williams were led with defending champion Jacques Villeneuve, as you've mentioned, and Heinz-Harald Frentzen, while McLaren retained Mika Häkkinen and David Coulthard. So I remember that. They were a strong team. David Coulthard Mika Häkkinen. Well, anyway, they were a strong team. And Goodyear decided to focus their tyre development with Ferrari, and they stayed with Michael Schumacher and Eddie Irvine. Jordan had recruited 96 champ Damon Hill from Arrows along with Ralf Schumacher. He thought if he couldn't have one, he'd go with the other Schumacher.
Yeah, that's right. And funny you mentioned that because when Williams had Frentzen was a young Heinz-Harald Frentzen, of course, and he was considered the Schumacher beater.
Yeah, okay.
That was his off-the-record reputation.
Because he was also German, wasn't he?
Yeah, I guess it takes a German to beat a German, maybe.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, so one team that thrived under the new regulations was McLaren Mercedes. So Ron Dennis was the the team principal there, and he produced the MP413, which was a revolutionary car designed by Adrian Newey and arguably the best, like we know him as the best aerodynamicist in the sport. As I said, he's the most, he's the most successful aerodynamicist I think the sport's ever seen. So it was powered by a Mercedes-Benz V10 engine, and right from the first race, it was the car to beat. It was the best one on the grid.
Yeah, and just to add a little comment about the Newey factor, this is 98. I don't know exactly when Newey left Williams. I don't know if it was December 97 or if it was mid-97. But in those days, it was a simpler world. And I imagine the Newey impact would have been much faster. Nowadays, the complexity of Formula One is it takes a year.
Gardening leave and
And it would have taken a year for the impact to flow through. But I think Newey played a big part in this 98 car, even though he just joined the team, because in those days it was simpler, I think. So that's my opinion, because obviously there's someone from 98 who's going to say, no way, whatever. Yeah. So as the teams arrived in Spa for the Belgian race, the championship was on knife's edge because Hakkinen was leading the championship with 77 points. They had a very different point structure back then. It was 9, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. 9, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. So he was 7 points ahead of Schumacher. So that's like the equivalent of nearly a win, because it was about 9 points for a win. And McLaren had a narrow constructors lead. But the journey to Spa had been anything but straightforward because there were real ebbs and flows.
Okay. So the season opened in Australia, where McLaren stunned the field with a dominant 1-2 victory. Hakkinen and Coulthard were so far ahead they lapped the entire field up to third place.
You don't see that nowadays.
No.
The performance understandably sent shockwaves through the paddock, making it clear that McLaren was the team to beat. However, a controversial moment emerged when Coulthard, who was leading, was ordered to let Hakkinen pass due to an earlier team agreement. Coulthard makes reference to this a few times later in his career.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Interesting that McLaren did that. They don't tend to do, or they're not good at that stuff, are they?
No.
So at the Brazilian Grand Prix, McLaren once again secured a dominant 1-2 with Hakkinen winning ahead of Coulthard. I wonder if that was team ordered as well.
I think he won that one fair and square.
Okay.
I think I almost remember it.
So Ferrari, however, was showing signs of improvement, with Schumacher finishing third and looking more competitive than in Australia. So is this the Schumacher Jean Todt era?
Oh yeah, this is early in that stage.
This is early in that stage. Yeah.
They started in 96.
Okay.
I think the gang didn't get back together till 97. I think Ross Brawn went from Benetton, and he came like a year later. So it was like they sort of rebuilt the team. And 98, they were starting to bed themselves in, I think. So, and it's interesting you say that, because I think we make a comment later about how one team's got one strength over another, and we can all see why. In hindsight, by the time the season reached Argentina, Ferrari had made enough gains to actually challenge the McLaren team. And Schumacher actually capitalised on a small error by Hakkinen and actually secured his first victory of the season and showed the championship was on.
Unusual error by Hakkinen. I reckon I remember that error as well.
Okay. Oh, do you? I don't,
but
actually.
We won't go into it too much right now. So we're into the middle of the season now, and that's the European leg of the season, and we see Ferrari closing the gap to McLaren, with Schumacher delivering a string of really strong performances. At Imola, Hakkinen suffered his first retirement of the season due to a gearbox failure, and this allowed Schumacher to take his second consecutive victory and close the points gap on the championship.
Yeah. And by this time, it was clear that Ferrari's strength lay in race strategy and consistency, while McLaren had raw pace. So that's something Ferrari would love to have today.
Oh, if only. It probably still is their biggest weakness. So the next few races saw McLaren and Ferrari trading victories. Schumacher won in Canada, while Hakkinen struck back in Spain and Monaco. By the time they arrived in France, Schumacher was within striking distance of Hakkinen in the championship.
Yeah, and this is where a pivotal moment happened, and a lot of Formula One fans remember this, when at the Silverstone race, when Schumacher was given a stop-go. I thought this was in mid-90s, but no, it was in 98. I didn't realise it was in 98. Schumacher was given a stop-go penalty, but controversy erupted when the team, this is a typical genius Ferrari strategy. They
is.
realised the pit lane, their pit spot was after the finish line. So he went to serve the penalty after crossing the finish line in the pit lane, which meant he won the race despite the penalty.
That is so funny. I cannot believe it. And that is Ross Brawn, right?
Yeah, Ross Brawn.
That's Ross Brawn. Ugolini. Remember Ugolini, Luigi?
We have not talked about Ugolini. Yeah. For those of you that don't listen to this podcast, you want to give people a quick summary of who is Ugolini and why are we mentioning him?
Ugolini was a team principal of Ferrari back in the 50s, I think. And yes, he had some very strange and memorable strategy calls, and I guess he decisions. So yeah, go back and listen to them. He's very funny. He
makes
funny.
A lot of protests, and he was and he also he was team manager for Maserati as well.
Yeah, Maserati. That's right. He did. He made a lot of protests. Some of them are very strange protests, but
yeah, and he always lost. That was his main thing. He always lost it, even though he was actually right sometimes. Still lost.
He still lost. So yeah, so this Schumacher Ross Brawn strategy did result in a major protest from McLaren, but Ferrari kept the win. I bet you now, though, the rules say you can't win the race from the pits.
Oh, they would have closed that big time. Yeah.
Yeah. So so this win cut Häkkinen's lead even further.
Yeah. So this is where we're getting close to the Belgian race now. So by the time the German Grand Prix arrived, the championship battle was at a boiling point. Ferrari had upgraded their car, and it allowed Schumacher to outpace McLaren on race day. And another victory for Schumacher put him just 2 points behind Häkkinen.
So that's something else we don't see very much of these days, where these upgrades actually mean a lot. Like the upgrades are like everyone brings upgrades anyway.
Yeah. I will, it's a good comment. I'll just say, in those days, they brought upgrades, and they were upgrades.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas nowadays, Aston Martin brought upgrades, for example, and the car kept going slower and slower.
They went backwards.
Yeah,
exactly.
So they were downgrades.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so Hungary. We're at the Hungarian Grand Prix, and McLaren was expected to dominate as their car was more suited to the tight and twisty Hungaro ring. They locked out the front row, and Häkkinen led the race comfortably in the early stages.
Yeah, then Ferrari outsmarted McLaren again with a brilliant three-stop strategy that allowed Schumacher to overtake both McLarens and take the wins. They treated it like three little sprints.
I remember that race as well.
Yeah, I remember it too. It was a masterstroke by Ferrari strategist, and it marked the moment where Ferrari fully established itself as a title contender. And you have to remember, this was in 98. They hadn't won a championship since 79. So this is like nearly 20 years later. But I remember this showed the confidence that Ross Brawn had, saying to win this race, you have to pass both McLarens. That takes a lot of confidence to say, I want you to do that, driver. You know?
Can you imagine these days if we watching a race where Ferrari thought they would do a three-stop strategy? We would freak out going, what are you doing?
Yeah, the world has changed.
Yes, absolutely. So with the championship, as we said, now separated by just 7 points, the teams arrived in Belgium and the title fight was wide open.
Yeah, so I know we had to spend a bit of time painting that picture, but in case you didn't notice, all we talked about was Ferrari and McLaren.
Yes.
You didn't hear us mention Jordan or Williams or Benetton.
No one else mattered.
They didn't matter, and they were not performers. So that shows the context that the Jordan team turned up to Belgium with. Yeah. So the Spa track, as we know, is a demanding layout with unpredictable weather, and it was a perfect battleground. And yeah, who knows if Ferrari were ready to take the lead now.
So rain was looming over the forest, and it's funny because sometimes it rains in part of the track here and the other part is dry. But yeah, I think the rain was going to be a big factor in this race. So yeah, no one could have predicted that. I know, like if some of you have seen this race, you would know the chaos that unfolded on that day. So we're going to go through it in a little bit more detail now.
Yeah. So the weekend got off to a pretty dramatic start because, as usual, rain did lash the circuit, and it made qualifying and practice quite treacherous. And on Friday, Jacques Villeneuve in the was he driving? He was in the Williams, right? I was going to say BAR, but that's later.
No.
He lost control of his Williams at close to 290 kilometres an hour, which I think is in the high 100 miles an hour. And I watched the video. No doubt you saw it because you watched the race, Rosa. He miraculously escaped unharmed. And, when I watched the video, did you see the video, what he did afterwards?
No, I didn't see him come out of the car.
He just hopped out of the car. I was like, you just slammed into those tyres. It was like, wow, that was like he just hopped out. Anyway.
So in Saturday's qualifying session, McLaren again showed their raw pace and Mika Häkkinen secured pole position with 1 minute 48.6, while David Coulthard, his teammate, slotted in second, again making it a all McLaren front row.
Which we'd seen a lot this year. Damon Hill in his Jordan actually did manage an impressive third place, which is the Jordan. Hill was always really good at qualifying. So
yes,
well, Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari had to settle for fourth, and I think he only had to settle for fourth because his fastest lap was deleted due to failing to slow for yellow flags.
So not much has changed, I see.
No, that has stayed the same. Drivers claiming they didn't see the yellow flag or something. But I don't know. I don't remember the incident, so I can't really say that. But yeah.
So this is after the Schumacher-Hill kind of competitiveness as well, because that was 94, was it? 94
to 96.
No, 96, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's lining up behind Damon. Interesting.
Yeah, so to the race, there were ominous clouds overhead, and the stage was set for a very memorable F1 race.
Yes, especially if you're a Jordan fan, or maybe more.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when I was watching it, there was a lot of teams wondering whether to put on the intermediates or the full wets. There was a lot of decision. There was less rules about what you had to put on. I think teams could choose. So yeah.
Okay. So as the lights went out, the field roared towards the source, but what followed was nothing short of carnage. I don't know what Mike Lang would call it if he wrote this. He wouldn't call it
nonsense. No,
it's hard to say. Nonsense that's normally associated with a driver, not everyone. Do you get what I mean? Yeah. So David Coulthard lost control of his McLaren. He hit the barriers on the right side before bouncing back across the track, and the spray was so thick. And if you've got to watch the video footage of this, I think. The drivers behind had no visibility. Neither did the camera filming it.
No.
All you saw was a film of spray and cars ploughing into the film of spray and cars coming out in various pieces on the other side of the spray.
Of the spray, yes.
13 cars were involved in a chain reaction crash.
Yes, so among I'm going to say victims, but they were all okay. There was no injuries or deaths, surprisingly. But I guess the people involved in the crash were Eddie Irvine in the Ferrari, Johnny Herbert, what was he driving? I can't remember now. Alexander Wirtz, Rubens Barrichello, Olivia Punnis, and Jarno Trulli. There's a couple of Prost cars. I think Olivia Punnis was in the Prost. Anyway, so pieces of shattered carbon fibre littered the track as cars slammed into each other, some launching into the air. Like I said, no one was injured, seriously. There was a couple of people limping afterwards, and I think Barrichello had a cut on his hand, which he immediately hid. So yeah, it was over the half the field and the race was immediately red flagged. And what is funny is that all these drivers are just getting out of their car and just sprinting to the pits because they all want to get into the spare car.
And in those days they had spare cars because they don't have spare cars now, do they?
No,
I think there's rules against it.
So
the top teams I think had 2 spares. They tended to call them T1, T2.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't know what T stands for.
Test
Temporary
or
test,
team car? I don't know.
Yeah, so it's funny you said they sprinted back. So, yeah, it was
so for the first time in years, there was severe damage. There was, spare cars. And there was like an hour-long delay before the race restarted with 18 cars. So pretty much everyone had a spare car.
Yeah, except 4. 4 teams failed to repair their cars in time or didn't have a spare car ready enough or whatever. So, yeah. So as they started the race a second time, I was surprised to see it looked like a pretty full field again.
It did, I know.
Yeah. So Damon Hill made a lightning getaway and actually moved ahead of both McLarens. However, behind him, disaster struck Mika Hakkinen. He lost control out of La Source, spun sideways, collected Johnny Herbert's Sauber, or there's your answer, ended his race pretty much instantly.
So with Hakkinen out, Schumacher's hopes of closing the championship were looking really good. He quickly moved past Coulthard and Alesi, and he set his sights on Hill. By lap 8, Schumacher had ruled in Hill's Jordan and executed a clean pass. I like how you said that, Luigi. Just have to highlight that.
Yeah.
To take the lead.
Well, Schumacher's got a bit of Verstappen in him.
Yeah.
You do clean passes on drivers that don't matter. You know what I mean? So from this moment, the German displayed a masterclass in wet weather driving. He was extending his lead every lap. His confidence in the treacherous conditions were just on another level, and he was just pulling away.
Yeah, so Murray Walker and, the guy, who's the other guy that was commentating this race?
It wasn't James Hunt because he passed away in 92.
It wasn't James Hunt. It's the guy that commentates now.
Not Brundle.
Yes, Brundle.
Was it Walker and Brundle?
Yes.
So that would have been a really good pairing. Yeah.
Yeah, they were commentating and they just could not believe the breaking points Schumacher was choosing and how he just was just pulling away from everyone. Like his lap times were 2 seconds faster than anyone else. So it's interesting to listen to it. So Coulthard, meanwhile, was struggling, the visibility issues making his McLaren difficult to drive. And Jordan's Ralph Schumacher was also moving up, overtaking Jean Alesi and targeting his teammate Hill.
Yeah, and then the moment of the Belgian Grand Prix happened. And when you say the moment, it wasn't even what's happened.
No, there wasn't enough already, Louis. There's more moments.
Yeah. So by lap 25, Schumacher had built a 40-second lead over Hill, and it looked like an easy victory was on the cards. And remember, Schumacher knew he was 7 points behind Hakkinen, so this win was going to give him the lead in the championship. However, as he came up to David Coulthard, disaster struck.
He was lapping him, wasn't he?
He was lapping him. Yeah.
Yeah, so interestingly, as you say, as Schumacher was coming up to lap Coulthard, John Todd, the Ferrari team principal, walked over to the McLaren team to ensure that their driver knew that Schumacher was coming up to lap him and to not hold him up.
You'd think that's enough. You know? They sent Jean Todt, if it was anyone else, Jean Todt would have sent a lackey.
Yes.
But no, he went himself to Ron Dennis and was like, they showed it. Did you see the footage of it?
Yes.
They showed it. Ron Dennis is up high on the pit wall. Jean Todt's walking in the pit lane, just tapping him. That's as high as you get. That's as high as you get.
How much good was it, Luigi? How much good did it do?
It did zero good. Because at one of the corners, Coulthard lifted off slightly, and this caused Schumacher to plough into the back of the McLaren at high speed. McLaren's right front suspension was instantly destroyed and removed, including the wheel.
Yeah, including the tyre, yeah.
And Schumacher, impressively, his car was completely horizontal with one wheel missing, had to crawl back to the pits on 3 wheels. His race was over.
He probably could have won. How many laps? This was lap 25, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's 40 or something. He wouldn't have done 15 laps. He would have got points. He would have got points, yes.
Oh, but it's so funny. Even the commentators say that, Coulthard probably lifted off and because you see him actually move to the side, off the racing line to let Schumacher pass. But because visibility was so bad and Schumacher thought, I'll pass on the non-racing line because Coulthard's going to be on the racing line, he ploughed straight into him. So what Todd did was worse.
Yeah.
Because he shifted all the cars around from where they were meant to be. Yeah, so Schumacher was furious. He leapt out of his car and he stormed down the pit lane, heading straight for the McLaren garage. And it did an unforgettable TV moment. He had to be physically restrained by Ferrari mechanics as he furiously shouted at Coulthard, accusing of trying to take him out deliberately. Poor Coulthard.
I know. And I think Schumacher's words were also not, you tried to take me out deliberately, but you also tried to kill me.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And the anger on Michael Schumacher's face, you don't want to be in the receiving end of anyone that looks like that.
No.
Because he wasn't like, I've got a job and this project went not my way. It was, deeply personal.
Yeah. And it still remains a contentious issue. And I think Coulthard's asked about it a lot, actually. He did later admit that he did slow unexpectedly, but that's because his team told him to. Like, obviously, from Schumacher's perspective, he slowed unexpectedly, but he insists it wasn't intentional. And the stewards took no further action. I think that was the right course of action.
Yeah, it was a racing incident. It was awful conditions.
Yeah, and they shouldn't have meddled. They should have just allowed the race to continue, and he would have just passed him normally. But
I don't know if what Todd did made it worse. I don't know if that would have changed anything.
Did.
You think it did?
Yes.
I don't know. I think it made no difference.
You can see Coulthard moving off the racing line.
But is that because of a message from the McLaren team, or was he doing that anyway? Did he see blue flags? You know,
it was immediately after you saw Todd racing over to the McLaren garage.
Okay, we'll never really know if it was.
You'll
the
never
reason.
know. We'll never know. That's right.
But it was yeah. So with Schumacher out, the lead fell back into the hands of Damon Hill, and his teammate Ralf Schumacher was now in second place. And for Eddie's team, this was the chance of a lifetime.
However, life is not straightforward, and Ralph was faster than Hill and wanted to overtake him.
Yeah. Now, remember, Ralf Schumacher at this stage was the young gun, and Hill was the older guy. He'd have been in his mid-30s at this stage. So, over the hill, Hill urged the team to impose team orders.
No, over the
radio. It made sense, though.
He was over the hill.
So he as in young Damon Hill, urged the team to impose team orders saying, if we race, we might lose this one too.
Yeah, of course he's going to say that. He was in one. If he was in two, he would not be saying that. But he does have a point. It was very wet.
Yeah, you can't risk the two drivers touching.
No, this is true.
You can't risk it. Yeah. So Jordan quickly stepped in and instructed Ralph to hold position. While the young German was reluctant, he obeyed.
Ooh. So the final lap did see Hill manage the gap, ensuring that Jordan would secure its first ever Grand Prix victory in dramatic style. He crossed the finish line. It was Damon's 22nd and final F1 win. Oh, I didn't realise that. A moment of redemption. Yeah, okay, for the former world champion.
And a redemption on two levels, not because he didn't get re-signed to Williams the following year because Williams didn't want to pay and all that sort of stuff. But he almost won a race with Arrows the year before, and he was ripped off with a car failure. And so finally he got that extra win to prove that he wasn't just a one-trick Williams pony, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say, and he beat Schumacher.
Oh, no. Yeah, so Jordan had done it, and a team that had never won a Grand Prix, which I felt was a long time coming. I thought they would have won it earlier than this. But anyway, a team that had never won a Grand Prix had now claimed a 1-2 in what was considered one of the most chaotic races ever at that time.
And behind them, John Alesi secured third for Sauber, giving that team their first podium in years. Frentzen took fourth, while Pedro Diniz and Jarno Trulli completed the point finishes. Yeah,
and a quick comment about Alesi getting third in Sauber. This was also an older Alesi because he was like he'd already done his Ferrari.
He's done his Ferrari. Stints. Yes.
Yeah, he was in the midfield teams, just on his way out, so to speak. So it's a great result for Alesi too to be on the podium again.
Yes. Yeah. So it's an iconic race, but like I said, not for the right reasons. It was just chaos. It's not like someone put in like an amazing drive and was like, superbly talented. Like shit happened. Like a lot of shit happened.
And it was one of the most dramatic first laps.
Yes.
I'd say, because you don't see that happen too often. And Coulthard, with the confrontation with Schumacher and Coulthard, everyone's going to remember that. And Jordan's fairy tale victory. It's a little bit overshadowed by the Schumacher-Coulthard incident because there was also another incident between Fisichella and another driver. And it was almost copy-paste Schumacher-Coulthard. So, and almost the same looking damage to Fisichella's car. The whole front one side was removed.
Yes.
So, but it was a big opportunity missed by Schumacher to close the gap. Was he too impatient to pass Coulthard? You have to put a little bit of onus on him. But for Damon Hill and Jordan, amazing time. And that's what I was going to make a comment about earlier. After the race, did you see how Jordan was running around the pits? He was running, it was like hopping and skipping. It was like, he said he looked like a crazy person, and he did.
He looked like a little kid.
Yeah. It was like, you don't see Ron Dennis doing that.
No.
Yeah, it showed the joy and the relief that must have been
right.
getting that monkey off his back, you know?
Yeah. He did say we were unbelievably lucky, but you've got to be there, which is what we say all the time when we're reviewing these races in the 50s and 60s. Okay, you're a bit lucky to win, but you've got to be there to take advantage of those moments. And he was there. So
yeah, and both cars were on the road.
Yeah, that's right.
Impressive.
Exactly. Impressive. Yep. Well, that's it. I think that was a really fun revisit of a 98 iconic race and commemorating Eddie Jordan.
And what we might do is when we do get to the 98 season in our normal race review, we might just slot this into the Belgian one. we might do, it might suddenly change, you know, all that sort of stuff. But that'll be funny if we do that. But yeah, why not? We've done the race review now. So yeah.
All right. Well, that's been our commemoration of Eddie Jordan. I think, like we said, we were both really sad to hear, but he's left a lasting legacy in Formula One. So I think we're going to end it there, Louis. Anything you want to add? No,
other than yes, I'll say I'll miss him, even though I didn't agree with a lot of the stuff he said, especially in his pundit days, because I felt like he was just trying to stir the pot. I still will miss him. So yeah.
You think that when anyone doesn't agree with you, though, Luigi. So
maybe.
Okay. See you later. See you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.